Hi everyone and welcome to note-taking lesson number 3. Today we're going to talk about what shorthand note-taking is and why it's important. We're also going to talk about why you need to mark in your notes where you need clarification or clarity. And finally we're going to talk about summaries and why they're important. And again, we have a little mascot here. So the dictionary definition of shorthand is a method of rapid writing by means of abbreviations and symbols. And you can kind of think of this as what we've sometimes done in class to help us remember our notes. We would, for example, take the definition of geologist and draw a rock, so that by looking at the rock we are reminded that a geologist studies rocks and minerals. We're taking what the notes say or what the lecturer says and simplifying it into something that's easier to write down and so that we can still understand it. So an example of shorthand is the teacher might say, "Donuts are very good for your overall health and they are very tasty." Imagine if you're in a health class. You then might write in your notes, DNTS, tasty and healthy. Now I want to call your attention to two things about this. First of all, we've abbreviated donuts into DNTS. Secondly, we've abbreviated that whole sentence into 4 words. Donuts, tasty, and healthy. And so we're basically just shortening what the teacher said into something we may be able to understand. So how do I write shorthand? Well, all I can really give you is experience and practice. And to think about the question, when you do shorthand, how would I remember what the teacher said using less words than the teacher? And the thing about shorthand is that we all recognize different words and symbols differently. So a random person in the back of the classroom might not recognize that when we write DNTS, we're really referring to donuts. And so because what works best for us might not work best for someone else, in terms of memory, in terms of our ability to remember things, I can't really give you a step-by-step process of how to do this. So I'm just saying experience and practice. The more you practice, the more you'll know and learn about how you remember things well. And the more you learn about how you remember things well, the more you'll be able to write shorthand more effectively. So uses of shorthand. It enables you to keep up with the pace of class and ensures that you miss less from the lesson. And this is simply because you're writing down less. You're abbreviating what the teacher says in a way that you can remember everything the teacher said. It also enhances your memory and enhances your understanding. And this occurs because you are reframing everything the teacher says into your own words. And anytime you reframe what a teacher says into your own words, you're enhancing your memory and you're enhancing your understanding. And this occurs because what ends up happening is you're doing more work at that given moment to understand everything that's going on. You're doing more work in your head, you're doing more effort, you're even expanding the effort to reframe something in your own words. So now we're going on to the second point today. Why do we need to mark where we need clarification? And sometimes we are unable as teachers to address your questions in class. Sometimes classes has to go by really quickly. You might raise your hand and we'll have to say sometimes, Elizabeth or Daniel or Joss, we need to move on. And so we as teachers don't want that intellectual curiosity to be stifled in those moments. Rather, we want to satisfy your curiosity by answering your question. It's just sometimes we don't have the time. So, marking those questions, writing down those questions, will remind you to ask them again. And you will remind you to hound us if we forget as teachers, because we have 6 classes sometimes and just have too much to do. This is good. Being like this guy is good. Why do we need to mark where we need clarification? You also may miss something during class. Class just goes by so fast that you may miss something, or you may completely misunderstand or not get something that a teacher says, just because we're going so fast through the material. And it helps your understanding if you mark those areas where you just completely blanked or don't understand. And then we can come back to you privately, during class, during an activity, and clarify these points. But if you don't mark it, if you just move on, if you move on to the next point in class, then you might not remember, and we might not remember to come to you and ask you, do you get this? So it's important to mark those points. It also helps with memory, because anytime your intellectual curiosity gets satisfied, anytime we are able to help that, it means that you're processing something deeper. You're doing more work to try to understand something we're saying in class. And anytime you do more work to try to understand something we're saying in class, you remember it better. So finally, why do we need to summarize our notes? First, it simply cues you into what you learned during the lesson. It cues you into what you forgot during the lesson. Summarization acts like a test or like a small quiz, requiring you to call to mind everything that happened that day. And so, for example, you go home and you're busy with like 5 classes. You have football, you have swimming, you have basketball, you have music, you have time with friends on video games, and then you start on the homework and you have no clue what we did in class. So summaries, writing a summary at that moment, will help you sort of think through and call to mind everything that you remember we did in class. And it will tell you, this stuck with you and this did not stick with you. You remembered this, but you didn't remember this. It's actually a good technique to do before you start on your homework. So summaries cue you into what you learned or have learned during the lesson. Cue you into how effective your day was that day, whether or not you were really focused in class or not. Summaries also enhances memory, because every time you go through that process of retrieving memories from class, you're reinforcing that memory. You're making it stronger in your head. It also helps you quickly understand your notes on first glance. Something that I really enjoy doing is every time I read a textbook, I'll read a paragraph or 2, and then I'll stop. And then I'll write a summary of that paragraph or 2. And if I can't write a summary, I know I didn't understand that paragraph. If I can't write a summary, I know I just breezed through it without getting anything from it, and I need to go back and I need to reread. I need to read it slower. And rereading happens to be critical for understanding a textbook. So I will read, and then I will write that paragraph, and then when I go back to it a 3rd time or a 4th time, I might just focus on the paragraphs that I wrote. And by focusing on those, I don't have to spend the hour and a half reading the textbook. I can just spend 5 minutes glancing at my summaries, and they'll instantly put the content in my head. It also helps to put your notes in your own words. Making a summary changes the wording of the textbook into just what is coming out of your mouth, what out of your mind. And that helps with memory, and that helps with understanding. We like this guy. In conclusion, all we want you to do is to follow the Google Documents link, do the Google Documents form, and really enjoy your day. It's a beautiful day. Have a good day.